Hi everybody, Jay here. I wanted to come in and make another video for you today and talk a little bit today about reconciliation. It's the word that just keeps popping up over and over and over again. And we hear about it all the time. As an Indigenous Métis person in Canada, you just can't get away from it. And it really is a problem of going on about what does reconciliation mean? Because we see it all the time. We see the government making all of these noises about reconciling with Métis people. And it's really interesting to see because reconciliation, it seems like that it really just means apologizing. We have the federal government that's issued apologies for the atrocities of the past towards Indigenous people in Canada. Even so much so that we have Justin Trudeau going to see the Pope to see if the Pope will apologize for residential schools and the things that happen to Métis people and Indigenous people in Canada in the residential school systems. But what does reconciliation mean? Does it just mean saying, hey, I'm sorry? Well, I can tell you, as somebody who's been married for quite a long time, that when I screw up and am put in the proverbial doghouse with my wife, that it's going to take a lot more than just saying, hey, I'm sorry, before things are made right. I'm going to have to man up. I'm going to have to do things and buy flowers and spend some money and eat a little crow pie and some humility to make it right. And so it should be. If we mess up in life, the people who love us most are going to require things of us and actions more than words to make it right. And so while apologies are good in the process of reconciliation, it's only the start. You can't merely say, I'm sorry, and then continue to do absolutely everything that got you to that place and without any change in action. How many of us would stay married if we just ever said to our spouse, you know what, I screwed up, I'm sorry, and got up tomorrow and did exactly the same thing all over again? We wouldn't stay married for very long. That's what we call an abusive relationship. And that is where Indigenous people in Canada find themselves today, in an abusive relationship. We have a government that continually tells us that they're sorry, that tells us that they want to change. But yet we see even today that the government of Canada in the House was given the opportunity to repeal sexism in the Indian Act legislation, something that should really be a no-brainer. I mean, hey, women have the vote last time I checked, and women should be able to equally inherit last time I checked. So why is it that the government is incapable of removing something as easy as sexism from the Indian Act? Well, it boils down to the fact that they're enjoying the benefits of an abusive relationship. And so they don't want to give up those things. They don't want to relinquish that power. They enjoy the position that abusiveness, that abusive power has, that autonomous control to dictate to others how it is going to be. And they'll continue just to say, I'm sorry. We're sorry that the Indian Act is sexist. We're sorry we discriminated against your ancestors in the past. We're sorry that you've lost your status as a First Nations person, and we're sorry that you no longer receive the entitlements that should be duly yours simply because of your gender. We're very sorry. That's what you're going to hear. What you're not going to hear is that they're going to jump through the hoops to make it a reality to repeal that legislation. You're not going to hear that. You're not going to hear how they're going to make restitution through the return of lands, through financial means, through the education system for our kids. You're not going to hear those things. You're not going to see those actions. All you're going to continue to hear is that they're sorry and not sorry enough to stop. Because if they stopped, that means that they would lose money, they would lose lands, and they would have to make things right. And the cost of making things right is just simply things they're not willing to do as politicians, because a politician is a politician, and a politician has to get reelected. And so if we understand the mob rule system, that is a democratic government, We understand that a politician has a 4-year shelf life of which they have to go back and hopefully get 30 or 40% of the constituents to vote for them, which constitutes a majority nowadays. And so they'll get reelected to their seat and they'll get another 4 years. And in that 4-year term, they'll collect another salary and another pension and they'll be set. And so the reality is they're not really concerned about making things right. I'm sure there are politicians out there who would try. There are politicians who'd like to leave a legacy. There are even politicians probably who want to do what's right. But the system that they work in, the colonial Canadian government system, is set up in such a way that it needs to preserve itself. Self-preservation of the system is its first and foremost priority, and to do that, you cannot make things right. How in the world are they going to hand over land back to the Métis people and to the First Nations people here where I live in Alberta? How are they going to do that when so much of the government's budget depends on resource extraction? You can't hand over land back to the First Nations people and to the Métis people who are going to kibosh or put limits on that resource extraction, or at the very minimum want equal participation in the revenues generated from those lands for the benefit of our own people. That would cost the government money. So how would they do that? How are they going to hand those lands over? It's simply not going to happen. So in the end, what does reconciliation really mean other than a I'm sorry? Nothing. It's a hollow word. And if we go into this as Indigenous people in Canada with the expectation that it should mean something more than I'm sorry, then I think we have a problem. We have institutions that are paid by the government to represent us, and if we think they're there for our benefit to negotiate these deals for land and or money, then I think that's equally foolhardy. We can see that these Métis Nation organizations and First Nations organizations are paid to be there. So when you see these guys flying to and fro, sitting down and signing memorandums of understanding with the federal government, you have to understand first and foremost they're not there for Métis benefit. They're paid to be there by the federal government. That's where they get their salary and their multi-million-dollar budgets, is they're paid. You don't see grassroots organizations there because we don't have the money. We're not funded. We work for the grassroots who, by and large, we don't have that kind of cash, and so how can we be there to represent the people? It's not going to happen. And so we're continually sold down the river, and all we get is hollow, empty promises and a bunch of letters saying, hey, we're sorry. So I think if we want to see better and we want to really make reconciliation mean something, then I think the grassroots are going to have to stand up and really become united together and support organizations that are working hard for that outside of these government-funded institutions. Short of that, all we're going to continue to see is a bunch of I'm sorries. So if you're interested in getting involved and you're interested in seeing the status quo change, I would suggest please leave me a comment below, hit the subscribe button, tune in, check out our internet page, our Facebook pages, and get involved in the conversation and let us, give us your feedback about how you think things should be done. And until next time, keep it real.